Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 14 of the Sajin Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Teal, and today we're going to jump into the topic of Buddha's birthday. Now, I absolutely love this time of year, and I'm kind of shooting from the hip this episode, so there'll probably be some little bit of mistakes and flubs here and there, but bear with me. I'm trying to get as many episodes out as I can. As you know, in the last couple of seasons, I've been trying to, I haven't been good at getting out episodes. So this is my, if it ain't perfect, just put it out and keep the ball rolling kind of thing. So with that being said, let's jump into our main topic, and that is Buddha's birthday. Now, Buddha's birthday was on May 15th of this year, and most people go in this area to Samgwangsa in Busan, and that is sort of the mecca for all things lanterns, and it is a huge display out there. Many of my photography students made the trip out, and that was kind of against my wishes because we went out there last year, and wow, was that an ordeal. And I don't think I made a Buddha's birthday episode last year about this, but let me put it to you this way. We went out on a Thursday. It should take about an hour and a bit to get to Samgwangsa from Ulsan, and it took over 3 hours. 3 hours of bumper-to-bumper traffic, 3 hours of waiting to get all the way up to the temple, only to find out that there's no parking at the temple. So you had to go back down, and you had to wait for a parking spot. Then you had to walk back up the hill to go to the temple. Not the best way to kick off the celebration. I did get some good shots last year, but this year I said, you know what? I am going to my old standby, which is Tongdosa. Now, if you aren't familiar with Tongdosa, if you're up in the Seoul area or if you're not even in Korea, Tongdosa is one of the larger, more prominent temples in the country of South Korea. And it is one of the more quieter ones during the celebration because I think it's more of a functioning temple, in my opinion, anyway. You could disagree, but like a lot of the larger temples in Seoul and Busan and whatnot, they are functioning temples, but they're also the big showpieces. So they sort of accept the Instagrammers and the crowds that come. Tongdosa, they embrace it, but there's also still a vibe that it is a Buddhist celebration more than a Instagram smorgasbord, if you can make that connection. At any rate, I do enjoy going out there, though this year I was a little bit disappointed with the walk up to the temple. I think it was probably a few years ago where I had one of the best experiences during Buddha's birthday, and that was I usually, for this celebration, I usually park outside of the main gate instead of driving up into the parking lot, because for me, that's just, again, it's a nightmare, and I just don't want to deal with it. So there is a massive parking lot on the street just in front of the main gate, but there is a 10 to 15 minute walk up to the main temple site. Years ago, I pulled up and I parked and I sort of was looking around, and one of the monks saw me, and through Korean we discussed what was happening. He said that there was a parade happening to go ahead and get into position. They'll be starting soon. So when I walked up that way, there was an amazing display of lanterns. There was, you probably seen my shots from this years ago, but there was crane lanterns overhead. It was just decorated beautifully. This year, there wasn't really that level of lanterns, I would say. Like there was a few up the road, but they weren't really as well put together all along the road. I maybe it's a budget thing. I'm not sure, but this year it seemed a little bit more low key. Like in other years, they really tried to go into like the Lantern Festival style. A couple of years ago, they had like Spider-Man and robots and stuff, but they didn't really do any of that this year. So what I did this year was basically the same sort of thing that I recommend to my students, and that is I park outside and I walk the whole length of the road up to the temple and really straight to the back of the temple. I want to get a good feel for what they got going on this year. And I arrived super early. Like what I'm saying is that like at that time, May 15th, Blue Hour was around, I'd say about 7 p.m., 7:20ish. And I got there at like just before 5. And what that gives me time to do is sort of make a mental note of where to shoot, how to shoot, what are some of the prominent aspects. And then I basically walk the whole distance. I bought new shoes, some nice ones for walking, and I just hammered my way through the temple. I got to the back, and I sort of had an idea of what I wanted, and it was fairly similar to last year. I went out there last year as well, and I had an idea. Okay, like I'm gonna shoot the reflecting pond with the dragon lantern wrapped around it, and then I'm gonna work my way back. So I'm gonna get the lanterns circling the main temple and a few other features. And for the most part, with Tongdosa, you're gonna get the same sort of lantern setup every year. They have red lanterns around the old main hall, and they've got the more colorful ones. There's a few white ones for the people who are no longer with us. I was just actually told this recently by one of my fellow temple experts that they said if you're looking at the white lanterns, those are lanterns for the deceased. Didn't know that. At any rate, my plan was very simple: shoot from the back, work towards the road, and then jump in the car and go. So once I had my plan in place, I headed out towards the Dragon Reflecting Pond Temple area. And this is a tough shot to get because it's so sort of cramped. It's tucked in behind the main temple, and it's sort of enclosed by another few buildings. And really, it's tough to get a good shot. And my idea for this shot was basically to sort of get the lanterns flowing down towards the main lantern, the dragon lantern, and get the people sort of, silhouetted on that. I tried getting a clean shot from around the pool like I did last year, and it just, I don't know, there's just throngs of people. It was crazy. So I backed away from that, and I got my standard, under the lanterns kind of shots, things like that. And as I was doing that, I bumped into a, student slash photographer friend of mine, and he's been wanting to take the class. He just hasn't really made it to class, which is kind of funny. He keeps signing up, but he hasn't made it yet. But at any rate, he was there thanks to my recommendation, and he really wanted to sort of tag along. And I told him basically, if you're going to come, you've got to keep up, because I was really, at this moment in time, Blue Hour has hit, and I had a lot of ground to cover. So he agreed and went along with me. And he was, I think, kind of shocked at how fast I worked, not realizing that I kind of made a plan previous to when he approached me. So we hammered through the temple. We got out. We got the gates. We got the museum, and then we headed down the path towards the parking lot. And by this time, I think he was getting kind of tired, and it was starting to rain a little bit. Basically, I gave him a choice. I said, well, you can come back to Ulsan with me, because Tongdosa is actually out in Yongsan, not Ulsan, or you can stick around. And I think he wanted to sort of go at his own pace. I was probably rushing him a little bit. And so he went back, but I do feel kind of bad, because as soon as I got to my car, the sky opened up and it just started to pour. And I don't think this poor fella had a umbrella or anything like that. So I do feel bad about that, but I'm sure he got some good shots from this. Now, for me, I wasn't too impressed with the shots I got this year, but again, like, it was tough to get a really clean shot with so many people, even with Tongdosa being a little bit more relaxed than some Guangsa. And the biggest one I missed was last year or the year before. I got some really good shots of the monks ringing the bell. This year, as I got there, they started the ceremony, so I didn't really get in a good position. And the problem was that there was a little bit of a few crusty people. So when I ran up to sort of get the monk in action, I heard from behind me, like in Korean, hey, we cannot see, blah, blah, blah. which was the signal for me to get out of the way. Because again, these people are here to see the ceremony. They don't care about you getting the shots. And it's, as I said in previous podcasts, it's when you go to these temples, you're there as a guest. If you're not a worshiper, for lack of a better term, the people that are coming, they have every right to tell you to get the heck out of the way, because that's their religion, or that's their prerogative. So with that being said, I sort of kind of shied out of the picture, for lack of a better term. I got some decent shots, but they weren't like world-class shots, I would say. Following that, I did a photo walk with my students up at Baekyeongsa in Ulsan, and that was a really good experience. We sort of combined two styles. We did the temple and we did the cityscape from the lookout. And one of the big things I really enjoyed was when we went to Baekyeongsa, like the class sticks out like a sore thumb. We are many, many different cultures. We are North American, Indonesian, Indian, Tibet, all of these places. And sometimes, that may not jive well with the quiet nature of the temple. They don't want random people stumbling around their little temple. Baekyeongsa was completely different. When I got there early, I did my usual walk around, and the temple manager, I'm not going to call him a monk. I don't think he was a monk, but he manages the temple. He came to talk to me, and I explained what we are doing, and he was more than happy to have us there. He actually turned on the lights early for us to get our photos. Another monk came out, and we were talking to her, and everybody seemed really, really happy that we were there appreciating the temple. And I was trying to cover my bases and be as considerate as possible. I said, is there any places that you don't want us to photograph? They said, yep. These two buildings, which they pointed out to me, that's the monk's residence. And, we don't want you photographing that, and that's, that's, they don't want us peeking into people's houses, period. But they said, inside the main hall, that's fine. Open up the doors. Perfect. Do what you will. And they even were suggesting different areas for the students to go and photograph. And for me, that was really something that I felt was like, you make that connection. And my students were super happy because, there is that little bit of self-consciousness. The monks, the workers, they all talk to the students. Some of them were practicing their English. It was amazing. And I have to, hats off to the staff and people at Baekyeongsa here in Ulsan, because they really made that photo walk special. After that, we went down to the lookout, which you can see the entire city of Ulsan. And it was a little bit disappointing because recently they've let the trees grow, so the bottom half of the pictures that I normally got were covered by pine trees. But we all had a good time, and we got our group shot and whatnot. But overall, the Buddha's birthday this year was a little bit rushed, I felt, in my own opinion, but I did get some, classic shots. But overall, I don't think I put my best foot forward this year, but hopefully next year I'll give it a better go and hopefully get some different shots. I'm really looking at finding some more unique temples to photograph in the coming years. But again, for the piece of advice I give is that if you are sort of struggling, just go with what you know, go with what's closer to you, but avoid the bigger temples, because you're going to get stuck in the crowds. And, if you're anything like me, you're going to get angry and annoyed. So with that being said, have a good day, get out there and shoot, and until next time, keep your camera warm and your shutters clicking.